Hello, everybody. I'm Ivar, founder and creator of Unleash. And today, I'm going to talk about how to escape the feature factory. So there is a massive, highly expensive lie being told in the tech right now. You get the feeling that every engineering organization on the earth has magically transformed overnight. They're all now operating as one pizza teams using generative AI to flawlessly ship thousands of lines of pristine code a minute. Let's be honest, that is not the reality for most of the industry. The software world is fracturing into two different unequal realities. On one side, you have a small handful elite of hyper-accelerated teams using AI to pump out features at machine speed. On the other side, typically the large enterprises, teams are still trapped in bureaucratic change management meetings, arguing over Tuesday night deployment window just to ship on a weekly cadence. But the reality, neither side is winning. The legacy teams are building the wrong thing slowly, and the hyper-accelerated teams, they have unlocked machine speed, only to realize that they're just manufacturing digital garbage faster than the users can consume it. Welcome to the velocity paradox. DORA is the annual State of DevOps report. It comes out every September, every year. And in the last edition, we learned that 90% of all engineers already adopted AI coding assistants on a daily basis. And 80% reports productivity gains because of AI. On the flip side, though, 30% have little to no trust in the code AI generates. On top of that, for every 25% increase in AI adoption, we see a reduction of 7.2% in delivery stability. This means that more bugs are sneaking into production right now because of AI. If we dig a bit deeper into the enterprise side of things, less than 50% of software teams deploy to production every week. At the same time, there is this huge FOMO right now in most organizations to adopt AI as part of their software building process. But adopting AI without the proper foundational tools and engineering maturity acts only as an amplifier for existing dysfunctions. It does not help if we can build features faster. If we don't get them out, it just leads to a reduced throughput. We end up building inventory of unshipped features. On top of that, if we don't have the foundational tools and safety net in place, we actually reduce the stability of our applications. And when we get bugs in production, we spend more time getting our applications up and running again. We have recovery challenges. And the reason for that is that when we use AI to generate the code, we have less familiarity of the changes that we put into production. So we spend more time figuring out what went wrong. My takeaway on all of this is that AI definitely got the boardroom attention, but it's also pushing engineering organizations to get their delivery capabilities together. We still need the right dev tools in order to take advantage of AI. On the other side, we have the AI elite teams. They run at 100x and producing code at unprecedented speeds. They do not have time to do desktop research, deep understanding of which problems to solve. They just build solutions. It allows them to test more ideas, and it makes perfect sense for a startup environment. It can be a huge risk in established products. The risk is that we accumulate a lot of bloat, that we are building niche features for a few users that most of our users don't care about, or even worse, that we design the wrong thing really, really fast. And there is another challenge right now being pushed on us from AI vendors. They tell us that we should run multiple agents in parallel, 5, 10 things should we build in parallel as engineers? Context switching has never been a good practice. I mean, we've learned that throughout the history, but it seems like we've forgotten about that now. And AI doesn't get a headache. Engineers do. And we need to make sure that we actually understand the things that we are building, why we are building it. And if we try to do too much at the same time, it leads to cognitive and intent debt. And the goal is not to burn the most tokens. It is to solve real problems for our users. We need to know why the problems is worth solving in the first place. And when we figure that out, we also need to understand why we need to solve it in a particular way. That being said, there is no doubt that AI is increasing the productivity for software teams. The question is more, how should we leverage the productivity gain that we're getting? Should we build more crap faster? No. And we also know that developers has never used 100% of their time writing code. Research seems to indicate that the truth is more in the 20 to 50% of their time. And in reality, developers are problem solvers. Our job is to understand which problems are worth solving and explore possible solutions. We need feedback loops to validate as we go that we are on the right track. We need observability in order to monitor that how the users behave, but also that our applications are behaving the way they should in production. We should know before our users if we have problems. But by blindly adopting AI to pump out features, we easily become a feature factory, building more bloat. This is not how quality software is being built. So how do we build quality software? I use a lot of AI these days to help me craft software, as all of you, 90% of you at least. The challenge I'm facing is that I have this feeling that AI has always encouraged me to do much, much more than I initially thought. It's really, really hard to scope down the problem. And it will also gladly do some refactoring on the way, just because why not? We end up building this entire castle of changes. Maybe the need for the user was to have like a garage for the car, and suddenly we come with an entire castle for the car. That might not be very practical. The reality is that the first principles on how we build quality software hasn't changed, not with AI even. We need to divide up our problems in the smallest possible thing that adds value to our users. We should build those in fast, small iterations. We should ship in small batch sizes. Shipping in big batch sizes just increases the risk. More things that can go wrong. And when we do ship those small iterations, we need to measure the impact. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to enable it for the user, but we can still validate it in production. We can validate that it actually works with real production data. And then as soon as we start enabling it for real users, we need to measure the quality. We need to measure the impact on the business. And we need to continuously collect feedback, both from our users, but also from stakeholders with deep domain knowledge on how these things needs to work to be correct. At Unleash, we still believe in the double diamond design framework. It divides the innovation process into two distinct phases called diamonds. It ensures that we are building things the right way, but also that we are building the right things in the first place. The first diamond is about deeply understanding users and the context of their problems. It enables us to prioritize which problem to focus on and why. What is the intent behind the things that we are building? It's very tempting in the world of AI to just skip the first diamond in the first place, in the sake of speed, because it's so cheap now to build solutions. AI can still allow us to improve the discovery phase, understand unstructured data, feedback from users a lot faster. But it doesn't replace the thinking process needed from human beings. And we need to really understand which problems are worth solving for our users. The second diamond, on the other hand, is about the solutions, the solution space, how to design things. And the reality, this is where AI is changing a lot of things these days. In the past, we would use a lot of prototypes and mock-ups because writing the code was the expensive part. No, it's not anymore. So now it's more practical to actually test different versions of the possible solutions to a problem. We can even test all of them in parallel in production. And it's so much more real for our users when they can actually interact with the real thing instead of a fake thing. It enables us to get more qualitative feedback from the things that we are building. In an AI-driven world, traditional static pre-production validation is dead, in my opinion. We cannot validate all the changes before we deploy anymore. We must test more solutions, and we need to validate them in production with real users, with real data. We are entering kind of the build to validate phase because we can now afford to test more solutions to the problems. But in order to not do this the incorrect way, in order to do this in a positive way, there is a couple of things we need to have in mind. We need to be very user-centric. This acts as a guardrail for not building bloat into the product. We need to constantly collect feedback, structure it, make it available to the entire team so we know the problems that our users are facing and which problems they want us to solve. Secondly, we need to ship in small increments. We need to try to divide the bigger things that we're trying to solve into meaningful, smaller increments so that we can constantly validate along the way that we are incrementally adding more value to our users. And we need to focus on flow over quantity. It's not about how many features we ship. It's about that we are able to have a continuous process of changing our applications, adding improvements, but also validate those improvements to make sure we actually improve the end user experience. And to succeed with AI speed, we need the foundational tools in place. DevOps is more important than ever. It made it fast, predictable, and safe to push code to production. But AI is also putting more pressure to the system because the expectations now will be we will need to test more things, deploy more things than before, which means that we need to level up the game in our CI/CD pipelines. And if you have manual steps, well, that is definitely going to kill your velocity. If you're still doing manual QA, good luck with that. But the reality is that DevOps is not enough. So we have numerous examples over the last year of big companies like Google Cloud had an outage, 4 hours downtime. We have Cloudflare in November, also yesterday apparently, taking out a lot of big services that we depend upon. And then we have GitHub with all the outages they have had recently. These are not startups. These have some of the best engineers on the planet. Still, when we read their post-mortem, they're all pointing to the same things. There was nothing wrong with DevOps. DevOps did the exact thing that it was supposed to do. It deployed the code, it changed the application, and it deployed it to production in the correct way. The challenge was that they didn't have runtime control. They had no way to actually manage risk. If we just had flag protected the change, is what they say. That we normally do. They just forgot about it in the Google case. I think that's interesting. And this brings us obviously to FeatureOps. So FeatureOps is a runtime control of your applications in production. It totally redefines how functionality becomes available in production. We're moving away from the binary releases where deployment and release is coupled. It enables engineers now to balance speed with control and quality. It allows us to measure the impact of the changes that we do before we make it available to everyone. So DevOps is about how code reaches production. It's about how we deploy applications, how we operate our applications. It's very technical. FeatureOps, on the other hand, is about how we decide to make function available to end users. It makes feature releases a strategic choice, enabling us to balance the speed with quality and control. With FeatureOps, we separate deployment of code from release of functionality to end users. Deployment of our applications should be a highly technical affair delivered by a CI/CD platform. Release, on the other hand, is a strategic business decision. By doing a gradual release, we control the risk as part of the learning process. We can decide to deploy to a very small cohort first just to validate that it doesn't break in production. And lastly, we need to pay attention to how our users adopt the features that we build. Is it being used in the way that we intended? Do we have the desired impact? What about the quality? AI makes it a lot easier to test solutions in production. And we need to validate more solutions to problems than ever before. And with this increased velocity, it also calls out more need for automation as part of the release process. And this is why we, in version 8 of Unleash, have added all the building blocks required to fully automate your release. You do that by setting up a release plan. And the release plan allows you to define the milestones that you want to go through when you are releasing a new feature. Maybe you want to test for the beta users first, and then you want to do 2% of users, then 5%, and then all the way to 100%. But then you also want to make sure that if something goes wrong, you want to stop the release. This is where you have impact metrics, where you can look at things like error rates, adoption rates, you can look at basket size, response times, whatever you care about for this feature. And then you combine that with an automated safeguard that can stop your release if the threshold levels are met. Or you can even kill the entire feature if that's the appropriate action. A lot of established tools in the market today, they do not suffer from a lack of features. Usually we see the opposite. There is too much buttons to click in tools we use. We need to think about software as a thriving garden. We plant many different seeds to see which one grows the best. And when a seed grows weak or fails to bloom, we perform gentle pruning, gradually removing it from the garden. This ensures that our garden remains healthy and focused. A sunset flag is the opposite of a release flag. The goal is obviously to take it from 100% rollout all the way down to 0 and then remove it entirely from code in the purpose of making sure that we have an easy to use product for our users. As engineers, we should reclaim software craftsmanship. It's never been the case that we use 100% of our time to write code. And we should not accept that generative tools turn our highly skilled engineers into blind feature factories. Adding more features is not necessarily making our products better. We should take advantage of AI to build better products for our users, not to build more crap faster. We do that by owning the outcomes and understanding the impact we are trying to make. And the best way to achieve that is to use FeatureOps to validate every iteration on the way. So we are doing a lot of cool stuff with Unleash at the moment, and we don't have time to go through all of this in this session, obviously. But I want to point out 3 things that we're currently focusing on. First and foremost, we are launching the Unleash Learning Lab this week. This is a new platform that gives you a clear and structured way to build practical FeatureOps skills. We're also investing more in the release management capabilities. So I told about 3 of them coming in V8, But obviously, we are investing even more in the release capabilities because we want Unleashed to really be a helpful friend in the release process of features. We want to make it even more intelligent into understanding the impact that the features you're building is having on your users. And we have a lot of cool projects going in this area. The last thing I want to point out is that we are now also looking into a ServiceNow integration. This is a highly requested integration from our enterprise customers because it's so important for enterprise customers that have decided to use ServiceNow as part of the compliance framework in terms of all the changes in production in one place, and ServiceNow is a highly used platform for that. And that's why we want to make it slightly easier for developers just to stay compliant in their enterprises by having a curated integration for this. If you are interested in the Learning Lab, you can find more information on the documentation or a link directly from your Unleash instance if it's hosted by us. We also have a very special summit offer for you guys. If you complete a learning path and get certified, you will unlock the ability to get some Unleash swag from us. Thank you, everybody, and have a very exciting FeatureOps Summit. I'm myself is very pumped about some of the talks coming. I know there is a high quality, and I always love hearing it directly from the field from customers. And I'm also super excited that this year we are also presenting more from the Unleash team and some of the really exciting stuff that we are doing. So have a nice evening, everybody. Thank you.